Capitalism. It's a great thing, right?
You bet it is. Stay tuned to find out why. Hello everyone, this is My Two Cents. I am back. After a torturous several weeks without home internet, I'm back. And what better way to celebrate than by debunking a Marxist? However, before we get to Emerican Johnson's ridiculous hit piece on capitalism, I owe a patron shout out to my friend Mag.
My name is Mag. I have a small channel making different political stuff, either abortion, gun control. When I'm short on time, I will either do a music video with one of my friends or I will make memes. Everything you see on my channel is either I'm adding onto a subject or it's a subject that no one's really talking about. As someone who has been a viewer on YouTube for years, I can understand from what a consumer wants and I want to fill in that need.
But anyway guys, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!
Please help out Mag by subscribing to her channel, link below. Without further ado, let's debunk non-compete.
Capitalism. It's a great thing, right? Capitalism leads to technological advancement, economic development, and human freedom. That is, until it doesn't.
Yes, capitalism does lead to all those things. But who wants to bet that by the time he gets to the when it doesn't part, he'll actually be talking about the state? There's a wager I'll take.
There's no question that the development of capitalism was a great thing for human society. Unfortunately, over time, capitalism has spun wildly out of control, transforming rapidly from a force for positive social change into a brutal system of oppression that's holding humanity back and destroying billions of lives.
What you mean is, the state insisted on interfering with the voluntary transactions that take place under capitalism. In doing so, the state destroyed people's lives. But then it successfully deceived the population into believing that capitalism was actually the cause of the problems that the state had caused. In fact, just a few seconds ago, the cartoon flashed an image of a giant hand holding a sword. Anything that involves coercion via force necessarily results from the state, not from capitalism and private business.
To understand why, let's first take a look at the system which preceded capitalism, feudalism.
For the sake of time, I'm going to cut out the part where he discusses feudalism, as I don't think this is going to be particularly relevant to the rest of the points he makes later on. However, I will leave a link to the original so you can confirm whether or not I've taken anything out of context.
As capitalism began to emerge hand in hand with industrialism, things began to change. Early capitalists gave peasants opportunities they never had before. Now, instead of toiling your life away on a peasant farm for a feudal lord, you could go to work for a capitalist in exchange for wages and try to advance your lot in life.
Actually, it's even more simple than that. By voluntarily exchanging something that you own for something that someone else owns, you both end up better off, and therefore both improve your lot in life. In the case of a business, your employer owns a business but does not have enough labor to operate it alone. You do not own a business, but are prepared to provide labor involving whatever specific skills you may possess. You therefore provide your labor to your employer, and he in turn provides you with monetary compensation, leaving you both better off than before you made the exchange.
As capitalism progressed, the old social order of feudalism rapidly fell to pieces. Feudal lords were usurped by wealthy capitalists who owned land and factories, the ancient craft guilds found that they couldn't compete with modern industrial production, and the newly formed working class developed a degree of social mobility as they could move from job to job trying to seek higher wages. This all sounds pretty great, right?
Yes, it's pretty great. But you should also mention that those workers also have the option of starting their own business if they believe it will lead them to being better off than working for someone else.
Well, it was for a while. Unfortunately, the good times did not last. Over time, capitalist processes lead to increasing economic instability, inequality, and societal destruction.
Oh, really? Then why is it that the freer a country's economy is, the less income inequality there is, and vice versa? This is a well-documented fact that progressives continually ignore. If you doubt me on this, I'll leave citations below for several different peer-reviewed studies that have confirmed this on both a national and international level.
To understand why, let's take a look at how capitalism functions. Under capitalism, all of the old classes of lords and peasants and craftsmen and merchants have been swept away. Now there are basically just two major classes: the capitalists who own the means of production, the factories and farms and other businesses of the world, and the workers who perform the labor that keeps the wheels of the economy turning.
Yes, I know. The bourgeoisie and the proletariat that every good Marxist has been taught to trot out in discussion. However, this is an overly simplistic view of how individuals fit into the economy, and one that is easily falsified. Check out my video, Kate Upton Debunks Karl Marx on Class Theory, to learn why the bourgeoisie-proletariat distinction is garbage.
Capitalists not only own the means of production, but they also get to keep a significant cut of whatever the worker earns or produces in the form of profit. Basically, capitalist bosses steal labor value from workers and transfer that wealth to themselves. In order for capitalist institutions to survive, they have to turn a profit for the capitalists who own them. Otherwise, they'll be forced out of business by more ruthless competitors.
Oh, for goodness sake. There is no such thing as surplus value, and profit is not exploitive. Let me explain this in very simple terms. A business owner's goal is to create a product or service which he will then sell to his customers. However, in order to make this goal a reality, he must be willing to pay the costs that come with running a business. He'll need suitable real estate, facilities, equipment, and of course, employees to perform various tasks. If at the end of a given day, the business has taken in more money from sales than it costs to run the business that day, the business has made a profit. If the business has taken in less money from sales than it costs to run the business that day, the business has suffered a loss. The kicker is, the business owner's employees expect to be paid for the services they provided, regardless of whether there was a profit or a loss. Marxists always point to successful businesses with high profit margins and cry about how that profit rightly belongs to the employees. However, when was the last time you saw a Marxist point to a business that was suffering losses and arguing that the employees should return their paychecks to the employer because they have a right to share in those losses as well? When a business owner hires someone, he does so knowing full well that he'll have to pay that employee for whatever service he provides, even if at the end of the day the business goes under. If employees have a right to the profits when a business is doing well, then they also have a right to the losses when a business is doing poorly. You can't have it both ways. Employees and employers engage in the contractual agreements that they do because both of them are better off than if they didn't. It's no different than any other voluntary exchange.
Capitalist institutions literally can't concern themselves with anything but profits, or basically they'll die.
Yeah? It's trivial to point out that business owners are primarily concerned with profit. They have to be. If they aren't making a profit, they're either breaking even, in which case they're no better off than if they didn't run their business, or they're suffering losses, in which case they're worse off than if they didn't run their business. The point you leave out is that the only way they're going to make a profit is if they give their customers what they want, leaving everyone involved better off. The desire for profit is precisely what causes capitalism to make life better for everyone.
Nearly all of the efforts of human civilization are now yoked to the will of capitalists who own the factories, the financial institutions, the mass media, the social networks, the tech companies, the medical and pharmaceutical companies. They own everything, so they get to set the agenda for our society.
No, they don't. In a free market, no one can be forced to buy from those businesses, leaving them subject to the will of their customers and no more able to set the agenda of society than Emerican Johnson is able to force everyone to become communists by making his videos. However, there is one institution that can give these businesses that power, and that institution is, you guessed it, the government. It's funny how the media, tech companies, healthcare companies, and every other industry he listed here just happen to be the industries that are most heavily regulated by the government. Government can increase business costs by imposing regulations, which of course lessens competition and limits the options of the consumer. They can also force taxpayers to pay for certain businesses via government subsidies or outright bailouts. At the beginning of this video, I predicted that when he started talking about capitalism's failings, he'd actually be talking about the state. And sure enough, I was right.
And what kind of agenda do capitalists have? Well, it's actually really simple. Capitalism steers humanity toward one end and one end only: ever-increasing profits for capitalists.
which are achieved by giving customers things they want and making their lives better.
See, capitalists don't really care about the welfare of workers or protecting the environment. They can't, because those things aren't profitable.
Oh, really? Then why is it that the more a country embraces free market capitalism, the higher the quality of its environment, the higher the standard of living of the poor, and the less wealth inequality? These facts are well documented. Gee, I sound like a broken record. The reason, of course, is that business owners only make a profit if they improve the lives of everyone involved, their customers and their employees.
Capitalism doesn't allow for businesses to be driven by ethics or morals or scruples. Only building profits will allow a company to survive. Anything that reduces profitability is inherently harmful to a capitalist entity. Sure, sometimes profitability does line up with good causes. Sometimes it's cheaper to be more environmentally sustainable, for instance, or maybe donating to a charity will net a big fat tax break for the capitalist, or maybe it's just good marketing to support a worthy cause. But this is all just incidental. Don't be fooled for a moment into believing that capitalism cares about the welfare of society. It's all about the profit.
Here's my question. What difference does it make? Suppose I grant that all business owners are nothing but greedy bastards who couldn't care less about anyone's welfare but their own. Even if that's true, they still won't be making any money unless they create a good or service that leaves their customers living better lives. If they don't have regard for the welfare of their employees will seek employment elsewhere. I'll concede that people do in fact behave unethically sometimes, and even under capitalism. But at least under capitalism, this is mitigated by competition. Do you really think that all human selfishness and unethical behavior is just going to magically disappear under socialism?
Keep in mind that there are only two ways to increase profits. A company can either increase prices for consumers or reduce costs. Competition tends to put a hard limit on what a business can charge, so as businesses become more powerful, they will always seek to eliminate competition and create monopolies so that they can charge consumers as much as possible to maximize company profits.
And they can't form monopolies without the help of government. I'll refer you to my collaboration with Filthy Heretic, where I make a thorough defense of this.
When it comes to driving down costs, the primary cost for almost every business is human labor. As such, capitalist businesses are always seeking to pay workers as little as possible or just eliminate them through things like automation to drive down wages as much as they can get away with.
And by reducing costs, capital is freed up to be used for other endeavors. It's true that automation may result in many people losing their jobs. This isn't fun for those people at the time, but you have to think about the long-term results. Now that production costs have been cut and the product is cheaper, consumers will look for new ways to spend their freed up money. Former employees will also look for new jobs to fill their time. This will lead to the creation of new industries that improve the lives of everyone, including those that initially lost their jobs. Think of it this way. The invention of the tractor may have caused many farmhands to lose their jobs, but were it not for tractors, most of us would probably still be spending our days doing farm work by hand and not working all the exciting jobs that we have today.
Naturally, this leads to tremendous accumulation of wealth for the capitalist class and ever-increasing wealth inequality between workers and capitalists. By definition, capitalism will always lead to the rich getting richer and the poor getting way more poor.
And again, why is it that wealth inequality actually decreases the more economically free a country is?
A lot of folks try to argue that capitalism can be reformed, that capitalists can be restrained through regulation and legislation that would put limits on the abuses capitalists can make to the people of the world and to our environment. This liberal position cruelly ignores the fact that even the most effective regulations and reforms do nothing to correct the power imbalances of society.
Actually, those regulations cause the very problems that you are claiming are caused by capitalism.
Such reforms are destined to be inadequate because they don't disrupt who ultimately holds the power in the system. As long as capitalists hold the reins of the means of production, they will always hold virtually limitless power over society.
Oh, so the problem with capitalism is that supposedly there's this small group of people, known as the capitalist class, who have too much power over everyone else's lives. So what exactly is your solution? Give a different small group of people absolute power to fix the problem? Do you not see the problem with your logic here?
Another major myth about capitalism is the idea of meritocracy. Capitalist propaganda seeks to convince us that hard work and good ideas will rise to the top, and that anyone can become a rich capitalist if they're willing to play the game. Unfortunately, that game is severely rigged, such that for every worker who does manage to break into the capitalist caste of billionaires, there are millions of workers who suffer and toil in misery from the cradle to the grave.
Why are you showing footage from third world nations with totalitarian governments that interfere in the economy? That's the opposite of capitalism. And again, it's the government that imposes regulations and makes it difficult to start your own business.
Some folks say that if we got rid of capitalism, universal laziness would take over society and nobody would work anymore because there'd be no incentive. This position ignores the fact that in capitalist society, the people who work the hardest make the least amount of money, and the people with the greatest fortunes, the capitalists, live out their days in luxurious laziness.
Okay. This is the biggest joke of all. You really think that performing manual labor is harder than performing the duties of a CEO? I've explained this in detail in my video Minimum Wage Debunked, but here's the gist of it. A labor worker is tired at the end of the day because he spent between 8 and 12 hours doing hard physical labor. A CEO is tired at the end of the day because he's spent hours consulting with numerous people in order to make difficult decisions that could mean either success and profits or failure and thousands of people losing their jobs. Who do you really think has the more difficult job?
Capitalism is an engine that robs wealth from the working people of the world and transfers it to a small number of capitalists who feel entitled to our money. It had its time and place in history. It was admittedly a great step forward from feudalism, but it's outworn its usefulness, and now's the time for capitalism to be dismantled so that humanity can fulfill our true potential.
And you're certainly not the first socialist to say this, yet the fact remains. Economically free countries are thriving, and socialist experiments like Venezuela are drowning in famine and misery. Who really has more evidence to back up their claims? I'm always amazed by the fact that Marxists can continue repeating these same talking points over and over, despite the fact that every country that's ever attempted to put Marxism into practice has crashed and burned. But then, that's what happens when you adhere to an unfalsifiable viewpoint. Evidence can never sway you, because you've already reached your conclusions from the get-go. To all Marxists watching, I pose this question. What would it take to convince you that Marxism is false? If you can't think of anything, even in principle, you might want to take a second look at how you're so confident in the truth of your position. And that is my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. Thanks everyone for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. And if you're a fan of my channel, please consider becoming a patron. For as low as $1 a month, you'll receive instant access to patron-exclusive videos, earn the right to participate in patrons-only live streams, have your name listed in the end credits of every video, and numerous other rewards. Be sure to check out my blog, my2centsvideos.com, and all other social media platforms as well. Uploads are every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, so stay tuned for more videos.